Welcome back to Bounce Forward with me, Tiff Hall. Today we have a bit of a special one for you. It's a mix of our celebrity bonuses. So enjoy listening to Pallavi Sharda, Ash London and my husband, Ed Kavalee. What's one habit that you've implemented into your life that has made the biggest impact?
I'll give you a work one and a personal one.
Fantastic.
I think tiredness is temporary.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the modern world and the external pressures are designed to keep people tired, to keep people angry, and to keep you unmotivated. I think that is and also attention now is your attention is something that you have control over, and the theft of that attention is basically the profit motive for almost everything that doesn't want to give you anything in return. So for me, garbage in, garbage out is something I say all the time.
All the time.
And I think personally, and even in personal relationships and for anything that you consume, even emotions, even people that you're around, what you consume is what you put back out. And that doesn't say that I get it right all the time, but I think on balance, I think that I try to almost every day is to have a lesser amount of garbage than I have had in the day before or whatever, to try and not have that go back out, that other way back out. And I think my radar for, hang on, that's bullshit. That's not serving me. That's not serving me. Even if I don't act on it immediately, at least I think I know better these days that is the case.
Mm-hmm.
On a professional level, I think I'm at a stage at the moment where I've been doing things long enough now to see what has served me and what isn't serving me, and how unless you address the things that haven't been serving you, there isn't anything else you can do to get closer to the things you think you might be capable of. I think that those are the two things.
So thinking about my community, and they're starting out on their journey, and they're nervous and they're anxious and they're overwhelmed.
Yep.
What advice do you give to them?
So knowing the results that you get from it, so the results that you get for people, Tiff, is based on two things. It's based on the fact of all of your experience so that the system works. But it's also based on the fact that they know that they can trust you to actually have their best interests at heart, which in a lot of ways is more important. So my advice to them would be, look for the people in your life, and it doesn't matter how tangential you think these people are, who have your best interests at heart. And use those people, i.e. Tiff, i.e. the community, i.e. people in your own life, IRL, as we say, to help motivate and support you in whatever it is that you want to do. That's what I would say.
Being in the spotlight, Ash, have you ever felt pressure to be a certain size or a certain look?
I tell you what, so my media career started 13 years ago or something. And it's not like I knew much about it. So I had won a competition to host a TV show pretty much. And I rocked up at the Channel 10 studios in Piedmont on day one for the PR shoots. And you know what a PR shoot is like. It's like you rock up, there's like 100 outfits for you to try on, and a stylist that back then I'd never met, and a makeup artist I'd never met. I had never had my makeup done. I was so nervous, and I would have been a size, back then, like I think about it now, I was tiny, probably a 10 to 12, maybe a 10, and not one of the outfits that they had pulled to, like, for me to wear fit. Nothing fit. And I had this moment of being mortified. And then I had a hair and makeup artist, Carla, who just got assigned to me that day, who has become one of my best friends in the world. And she straight away, and she'd been around the tracks a couple of times, and she pulled me aside and she said, "You don't change. They just get clothes that fit you. This has nothing to do with you." And that stuck with me forever. So, and there was no pressure put on me. It was just the fact that, the expectation was. And for my career at Channel 10, I couldn't really ever wear things from stock because they were a 6 to 8 and I was a very normal size, kind of 10 to 12. And then when there was a period in my kind of early days, a breakup was involved. It happens. I was on TV. My career was taking off where I got too skinny. I got too addicted to exercise. And this isn't what I was talking about earlier, the time in my life where I was my fittest. This is just the time in my life where I was my skinniest. And I was going to the gym too much and I wasn't eating enough. And although I'd never felt pressure up until that point to lose weight, the reaction I got when I was thinner was quite shocking. Everyone was falling over themselves to tell me how good I looked and how awesome the clothes were now that they could just style me in anything and pull samples.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, and nothing was done with malicious intent. It was just, you know what it's like. You see someone, and I think especially a woman who's lost weight, the first thing you want to say is, "You look great."
Yes.
Because it wasn't really that helpful.
No, we should never comment on other women's weight. No. So you've worked on breakfast radio as well with my husband even, Ed Kavalee, and that is a grueling schedule.
Yes.
How did you find that with your health and fitness, your mindset, all of it? Was that a really tough time?
I was meditating.
Yeah, tell me about your meditating.
Yeah, so I got into meditation, I guess it was a couple of years ago. It was before I was doing that breakfast radio show. And at the same time as we were doing that show, there was another part of my husband and I's life, which was a side project we were working on, which was becoming very, very stressful, way more stressful than the breakfast radio. That was like a walk in the park, getting to work with people I loved.
Yeah.
So I was so thankful that maybe a year before that I had started a practice of meditation. It wasn't something I was having to force into my life because I was so stressed that I was feeling like I wasn't coping. I was already in the habit of spending, I had no kids up back then, like an hour I could spend meditating. These days, like 4 minutes under the covers. But so I just did a lot of mindfulness meditation, which is really nothing that fancy. It's just learning to be in the present moment, because at that time I was thinking about so many other things in life, most of which were in the future that hadn't even happened, 95% of which didn't happen. I was just stressing about the possibility.
Anxiety, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I had that kind of the meditation really saved me, and the exercise really saved me. Just having that, I would just go 3 times a week with an amazing personal trainer, Lenny, who I, adore still. And it was like, if anything, it was just like turning my phone off for 40 minutes, right?
Yeah.
Like, the exercise
so
was great, but leaving my phone in that little cubby hole and it's another form of meditation exercise.
It is, isn't it?
Totally.
It's being present in the moment.
And listening to your body and feeling the feelings in your body right now. And when you're like on your 10th rep and you like trying not to say the C word because it's so hard and you're so tired, you can't think about some dumb thing that's stressing you out about work. You have to just try and get that, that next rep done. So, I don't know how – I think if anyone does breakfast radio long term, I think everyone has their thing, For some people it's unhealthy. Some people are functioning alcoholics on the air after 10 years of doing that. Other people have, super, like controlled eating, or they have to really, like who I love, like Fifi Box, who's just obsessed with her family and doesn't care about anything else. And I love that because I watch her and I'm like, you're not doing all this other crap. You're just like, well, what's the priority for me? It's my girls. And, her work is a huge part of her life, but I get the sense that that's really just exists to feed into the life she wants to give to her girls. So, everyone's got their kind of thing. And if I did it again now, I don't know what my thing would be, because I'm in a very different headspace now, and, it's full on though. You've lived with Ed for years. It's interesting
how it changes, doesn't it? And that's one of the hardest things about becoming a mum, because the coping mechanisms and the things that you used to do before having a baby, which I used to do if I was in a funk, I can't physically do now. I used to go for a run if I was in a funk when I was back then. Now I'm in a funk and I can't leave the house because I've got a baby and I've got to do homework with my preschooler and all of that.
Honey.
Do you know what I mean? So
I know what you mean, big time.
So it's
like,
hard,
what am I supposed to do?
What are you supposed to do?
And I find that, like, which is so bullcrap, because if a woman told me she felt this way, I'd be like, what are you talking about? I still feel guilty if I have Buddy with somebody else and then do something like go to the gym. because I'm like, no, I should be working. I should be making money. I should be doing something that's like, whereas like no one else, and my husband certainly isn't telling me you shouldn't be going to the gym while Buddy's in care. Like it's like you can't win sometimes. I feel like whatever I do, I'm going to find a way to make myself feel guilty about it. If I work too hard, I'm going to feel guilty that I'm missing out on Buddy. If Buddy's in care and I'm taking care of myself or going to the gym or going for a walk, like I used to do a lot of walking, but then the guilt took over and I was like, you can't go on an hour and a half walk, so let's make that a 20-minute walk. And then, so I play a lot of games with myself in my head to kind of justify and negotiate. Exactly right. And no one else, and I'm sure you're the same, no one else in your life is feeding you those things like, oh, you shouldn't do that. Like that's not what a good mum does, or you need to prioritize Buddy, or is that a good use of your time today? And it can be exhausting, but I am trying to find those pockets of things that are just for me. But I have to like tell myself the whole time, like, you are allowed to do this.
You have made some amazing films and some amazing dance sequences and even directed some yourself.
Yeah.
Like, I've just loved watching you. Tell me about your health practices in your lifestyle.
Well, I think it's really varied in the sense of my schedule is so up in the air and I travel so much. And I have to say the one thing I do struggle with is consistency because, you change time zones and then all of a sudden you're jet lagged and you're out and motivation wanes and things like that. But the things that I tend to come back to are diet and yoga and meditation. And the reason I say come back to, it's sort of, when all chaos is erupting, I just go, these are three mainstays that will get me back on track no matter what.
Yes.
And movement through meditation through movement, which is yoga, but also my dance practice. And when I say that, it's no longer a rigorous classical Indian dance practice that I used to have when I was younger, which is the style of dance I was trained in, but it's more free-form movement and feeling into my body and just moving energy around in a way to kind of shift moods and elevate mood.
Yeah.
But yeah, diet is a big one for me in the recent past. It's become even more important because something I'm learning about and advocating for is Ayurveda, which is the Indian medicinal tradition. And Ayurveda is all about preventative medicine and making sure that we are taking care of our health before we get sick.
I love that.
And it doesn't yet. Disease is you're preventing disease basically. And I have 2 autoimmune disorders. One is alopecia and the other is lichen planus. And these were both disorders that I started to feel when I was in India because of the immense stress I was under.
The stress.
Yes. It's been a very stressy decade.
Yes.
So, the pressure I put myself under to go and make it in India with no odds in my favour was a pretty intense thing to do. And actually in the same way to come back to Australia and say, now I'm going to do it here and start all over again where the odds were also not stacked in my favour for different reasons. It's been a wild ride, and so there's a lot of pressure I've put myself under to penetrate these industries at a work level. But there's so much emotional angst in what I do because you're an actress, you're putting yourself on the line. Like there's a very fine line between Pallavi, the actor or the professional, and me, the person.
Yes.
Because it's not like you go and you're fighting someone else's case as a lawyer and you can switch off at night. It's like, no, it's still your body, your brain, your soul.
Yes.
And so I think the angst and the stress that you feel when you're a creator, it's so personal.
Yes.
And
it affects your health.
Yeah, absolutely. And therefore it affects your health. And so I started to feel these things very young, and I was a very healthy younger person, so I didn't know how to cope with getting sick. And slowly I realised that it was what I was putting into my body and it was my lifestyle that was contributing. It's like, okay, I can't change the fact that I have a stressful job. I can't change the fact that I travel a lot. I can't change the fact that there's a lot of pressure on me, but I can change what I put into my body. I can change whether or not my nervous system is able to self-regulate based on the amount of meditation I have in my life or the amount of mood-enhancing activities that I do. And so for maybe I'd say like the last 5 years particularly, or 5 to 7. It drops in and out. You know, sometimes you're on a hectic schedule and everyone's sort of like partying and going out and you want to be a part of the fun, and so you have a few late nights and all of a sudden the routine's gone and you're like then hating yourself.
Yes.
So that happens, but I've come back to it enough times now to go, this is my life and my way of living. So yeah, it's a very long-winded answer, but there's a few things in there, you know.
Yeah, definitely. And like what are some of the things with your diet that help you, especially with your nervous system?
Well, I think, you know, Ayurveda has a lot of, it's all based on, it's almost like a farm to table kind of way of eating, right? So in our house in Melbourne, where I grew up and we still have that home, we have like a really beautiful garden filled with fresh vegetables. We basically make food from the garden. My mum is an exceptional Ayurvedic cook.
Yes.
And it's like a talent that's...
I have tasted
Yes.
amazing.
It's amazing.
Yes.
And I get fresh, you know, and you've tasted it. It's like made from... There's a lot of turmeric, which is anti-inflammatory in the food. There's the right amount of salt. It's not overly salty. It's not overly spiced. And it's often vegetarian, the food that we eat, and it's about making sure that the nutrients from the vegetables are still alive because they're not overcooked. There are various ways of preparing the food so that we're not killing the nutrients in the food, you know. Whereas I think if you go and have Indian food out in the restaurant, you're probably getting like something that's really curried. There's a lot of salt in it. There's probably a lot of cream and all of these other artificial sweeteners. That's not traditional Indian food, particularly from the region that my parents come from in North India. And then obviously there's South Indian food that has its own medicinal quality and it's different kind of spices, curry leaves, mustard seeds. But it's really about the freshness of the food and making sure you're eating things which are freshly cooked every day. You're not eating, I mean, in Ayurveda they say you shouldn't even eat the same meal twice. It shouldn't go in the fridge and come out. It's already lost a lot of its nutrient.
Yes.
And it's prana, you know, and, you know, we talk about prana. If you go to a yoga studio in Melbourne, everyone will be talking about prana and chi and the life force and the energy. There's energy in food. Yes. And it's that energy that we are ingesting. Yeah. And so you don't want to kill that energy. You don't want to freeze it. You don't want to you're eating stale food, basically. And that's the idea. And things it's such a big topic, so I'm kind of skimming over it.
No, of course.
Ayurveda, the concept also is that we have doshas. There are 3 doshas, the Vata, Pitta and Kapha, and they determine your bodily makeup. And so I'm Vata and I'm Pitta dominant, so it means I have more fire and more wind in my body, and there are foods, it's a science, it's a whole system where there are certain foods that aggravate that. And the idea is that all your 3 doshas that exist within us should be in balance. So it's all about finding balance and harmony. And so if I have a skin disorder, it's like they'll know that that's your pitta, which is being aggravated. So you have too much fire in your body right now. This is the food that will actually help that. And it's, you know, if I went on a Panchakarma earlier this year, which is a very intense Ayurvedic retreat and cleansing process. So I learned a lot and I went a lot deeper into the practice of it. But it's basically a cleanse. I drank ghee for a week in the mornings. And ghee is a lipid.
Yes.
And I know you do a lot of stuff with like coconut oil and, you know, like, you know, and the binding of how it binds to toxins when you do your oil pulling and things like that. So ghee has a similar quality, and the idea is you drink a little bit of ghee every morning and it binds to the toxins in your body, and then you go through a purge in week 2 where you have a laxative and it takes out the toxins that have been stuck in your digestive tract for years sometimes. And so the basic concept is when our digestive fire is working, when the word in Hindi is Agni, the fire is working. And you've always talked about the furnace, you know. So it's very similar conceptually.
The metabolism and the furnace.
Yeah. And it's that science, but we're just making sure that the food that we put in is very clean and it's medicinal. So food is medicine at all times.
Yeah, I love that. Thanks so much for listening to Bounce Forward. I hope you enjoyed that. Please get in touch with me on Instagram at tiffhall_xo, and don't forget to rate and review me on your podcast app. Speak soon. Happy days.